Being a human rights lawyer in Botswana is challenging. So I've had situations where somebody would be in police custody and he gets tortured or gets mistreated in some way, and he would say, yeah, I understand that when you are in the custody of the government, you become government property. When you challenge those that abuse human rights or violate human rights, you're often seen as this human rights people, in a bad way. People are not so accepting of people who speak out for human rights. But I keep pushing and making them understand, because it's more of an education need than anything else. I felt that the only way I could contribute meaningfully to humanity and getting justice for those that are downtrodden is through being a human rights lawyer. In Botswana, human rights is an alien topic. So the first challenge is, inculcating it into the minds of the people that they actually have rights. They don't think they do. They think that the government grants them rights. It's absolutely something we can do. We hold workshops around the cities and the villages, and also do it more of a multidisciplinary manner, where you also involve people maybe from the medical legal field and those from the psychosocial, and open people's eyes about what steps do you take if your rights are violated. Where are these rights enshrined? How do you invoke them to assert them in a court of law or any other forum that is ready to listen to you? And then you gotta keep doing strategic litigation and get it published in the media that is available, so that people can read about that. Those are the two main approaches that could potentially work to raise awareness on human rights. Botswana is a dualist state. That is to say, international law does not automatically become law. So it has to be domesticated through the legislative processes of the country for that to become law. So having ratified the Convention Against Torture, there is no legislation that domesticates it. So you can't actually go to court and plead torture, because it's not a crime in Botswana. So the way these crimes, if there's ever any prosecution or court action that takes place, the way they are dealt with will be using the usual common law offenses. That is the challenge. It's not even a topic that I've had been discussed within our parliament or the National Assembly. Nobody talks about it. Maybe because the people in there generally are not human rights conscious like ourselves, or they're not aware that there's a problem. So the challenges that we have is the acknowledgement first that there is a problem of torture in Botswana. In Botswana, when we talk about torture, it's always law enforcement people. When you're talking police, you're talking of prison warders, you're talking of, at a lesser degree, soldiers as well. And this happens in custodial or extra-custodial settings. For example, you could be a suspect in a crime. They just suspect you for whatever reason, and then they come and pick you up and go and torture you to confess that you did it. And then sometimes you end up confessing, or you get seriously injured or wounded. In some cases, even dead. You're really not free most of the time. Your phones get tapped and listen to your conversation. So you have to conquer the fear of what might happen to you. It's a very isolating area of law, because most people don't want to do it. And I'm probably one of the few, or maybe the only person that I know that does it. This kind of cases, because for years, the human rights was not a topic that was common in the Botswana context. It was left to the often misconstrued notion that Botswana is a shining beacon of democracy. It's quite an uphill battle. You'll see that I've got a serious challenge ahead, simply because in Botswana, there is no police oversight or oversight for any of the law enforcement bodies that we have. So if you get tortured by the police, where do you go? You go to the police to report that I was tortured by you. So do something about the way you tortured me. So the files disappear and the dockets disappear all the time. And so we end up banking more on the civil side of things to say, at least this person can get some compensation of some sort. They always make sure and cover up for the perpetrators. That's a big challenge. So to secure the evidence, I become a lawyer and an investigator myself, and investigate my own case. No cameras in the police stations, in the interview rooms. Well, sometimes also the interview room becomes the jungle. They take you somewhere. far away from everybody and deal with you there, do whatever they do. That is why we've been advocating for all interrogation rooms to have cameras and police to wear body cams. I think right now I'm handling countless cases, and all those cases I'm not doing them at a fee to get justice for the people. I think that is a very significant contribution, looking at the expenses that are involved. And then what we also do is that periodically, I would gather students, like my students, and teach them to go and teach other people. I've got about 400 law students that I teach. The results might not come in the next 2 years, 3 years, but over the years, we'll have a legacy of having been the pioneers of this movement, the human rights movement against torture, to ensure that people don't just get tortured and the perpetrators get away with it. In the time that I've worked on torture, perhaps the biggest victory was us securing the first ever conviction, the first ever prosecution for torture in South Africa, and also being able to secure compensation for the victims of torture. The goal, first of all, is to advocate for the domestication of the Convention Against Torture, and also for Botswana to ratify the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture, and eventually the establishment of an NPM, a National Preventive Mechanism, to advocate for the establishment of oversight bodies, independent oversight bodies for police, like police watchdogs. We don't have that in Botswana. And also to advocate for a more vibrant civil society that is given independence and does not get derailed by intimidation, and is not too aligned to the people that are the perpetrators. And that's when we established Makwati law, which is just basically a few months old now. The motivation comes from seeing people getting the results and being happy, like, oh, you just help us to get justice. See that success, you want to do the next one. That's what I've found to be my fuel that propels me forward to keep doing these things.